Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special segment of the SWW show. It is me, AJ. I am here with Paolo, a self-quarantining VR developer.
Hey,
I
hey
feel like the
everybody.
self-quarantining at this point is a non-factor. I feel like everybody's in some form of either stay at home or staying at home for safety of others
hmm
in this
Yeah.
post-corona pandemic world.
Mhm.
Which I have to say, I feel really bad for the beer. Like, they couldn't have named it anything else. Like, they had to go with coronavirus.
That's very true.
Like,
I have a friend in
I don't
Corona.
even like Corona, but like, I kind of feel bad for him. Like, they just kind of got thrown into this.
Well, I know that after this, a lot of folks will be probably buying Corona and drinking it as a joke. I mean, I don't know, it's a marketing entry point for them one way or another, but we'll see how that goes. I feel like
They need to go
there's,
hard on the marketing of just the It's weird to say viral marketing when you're talking about a virus pandemic, but the viral marketing of, oh, you're gonna name a virus. Well, I know they didn't name the virus after it. It's a strain of viruses, but the worst
it's
pandemic the world has seen in how many years, and it's named after a beer. And if they don't lean into that, then I think they're missing out.
Yeah, the TikTok thing, like it's Corona time, has been going around like on the on the waves. I'd be surprised like if this came out and everything was all over. I can imagine Corona saying something like, it's all over, time to drink some Corona, or like win, or I don't know, something
It,
something about that.
it's all over. It's Corona time.
Yeah. I feel like everyone's gonna make one once it's out. I can't wait for that though. See what happens.
So your game is Tales of. Okay, here we go.
The Aswang.
Aswang. Okay, I
Yeah.
was gonna say I try to normally pronounce everybody's name.
Mhm.
Granted, my world languages stop at approximately Central Europe, so
Yeah, I'm actually pretty curious how a lot of folks have pronounced it. Like, if I didn't say what it was pronounced, how would you have pronounced
I
it?
would probably go Aswang
Oh,
or
that's
Aswang. Like, obviously, so I cheated a little bit. I looked at the Steam page,
yeah.
saw that it was of a uh, descent that is east of me, far
hmm
east. So I'm like, it's probably not Wang, as in like European way of
hmm
reading that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's pronounced Aswang. The reason why I guess it was really hard to sort of choose a name that sort of resonated with a lot of folks, and then I did realize the connotations of how people may perceive the word Wang from a European standpoint, because there were many terms that I wanted to say, like the Filipino mythological creatures, the monsters, or and there were so many words. I went through like a couple of writers just to figure that out, and we eventually settled on Aswang because it was sort of easy for everyone to pronounce because there were terms like the the capre, and you end up reading it as capers, and you have another one that's way more trickier to pronounce, the manananggal, and it's like, well, what is that?
Yeah, no.
And I
See,
was
that would be a hard miss on my end.
Yeah, so it's usually like trying to figure out like, okay, put some of this and introduce them, and without putting a really different lens on them. So yeah, the VR game is Tales of the Aswang, and it's a game about Filipino mythological creatures. So and the VR experience has you exploring some of the tales, or at least some of the um, how would you say? I forgot the right term for that. It's
Like folklore?
verbal myth. Yeah, but it's more let me find. It's like a verbal mythology or like it's like oral tradition. There you go. It's oral tradition.
I was gonna say
So it's
I know like Scandinavian it would in English it would
hmm
translate it into basically nightmares.
hmm
Um, like the dark tales, effectively,
yeah.
which Scandinavian dark tales are. Let me
hmm
tell you, they give Freddy and Jason a run for their money. So,
Why?
oh, they're just
Scandinavian.
super dark.
Ooh, yeah. A lot of these tales, at least what sort of fascinated me about the tales was that, I mean, I usually just have to give a primer, is that these are from the Philippine Islands. There are over 7,000 islands. Actually, it's actually it's somewhere on the Far East, and it's somewhere around Southeast Asia. It's close to Japan, Korea, China, everywhere. And it's subdivided into three major islands and tiny islands that surround those three major islands. And throughout history, it had relationships with Malaysia, Indonesia, China. It had a lot of trade previously, and then when the whole world was being colonized by Europe and Spain, we got colonized by Spain. And Magellan was the one who had set foot. So the one who discovered around the world, the one Magellan who sailed the Strait of Magellan, was the one who landed in the Philippines. And to give it, really interestingly short, he did take over some of the middle islands and he went all the way up and he was able to sort of, I would say, like the Spaniards had control of the Philippines. Let me see. I'm doing a Google search for this, like 300 years.
That's
Yeah,
yeah, that
898 minus. Yeah, that's a lot actually. 1565. Yeah, 333 years. So they took over. They also sold it to America. Um, there was a period where they sold to America, and the Philippines was basically an American controlled region. And somewhere time during the Commonwealth, they decided that they want to do independence. And yeah, they would their independence, their republic. The whole government system is actually patterned after the United States, but I'm not going to go deep into that. But the interesting thing about that is that the North developed their own stories because of the colonization of Spain. So they developed a lot of Spanish traditions, the religion, and those storytelling. Priests came in. However, some of the southern islands were not entirely controlled by Spain because they could not fight or attack them in any way, but they still said that the whole island was still theirs, that whole area. And throughout the years, one of the things that was pretty prevalent were stories about the spirit, the ground, the earth, and a lot of that with nature. When the Spanish came, the religion basically said those are basically all devils and they're demons. And they tried to change all the stories to fit that story. So a lot of the stories have evolved. However, one of the things that the priests noticed was that the oral tradition was very strong about the belief system of the locals. Like they couldn't get rid of that. And and of course, as the years progressed, this is actually the reason why I actually brought this project was I'm not sure if you're familiar that, a lot of developing countries have this sort of colonial mentality where they consider anything that's coming from a Western source to be far more superior than theirs. So when it was time for them to be independent, there was a decision. Um, let me see. I don't know why I'm blanking out um, on names. Oh, Maximo Ramos, one of the founders of Phoenix Publishing and one of the professors as well in the University of the Philippines, suggested that we should talk about mythological creatures because it informs our own country's culture. And this was like in the early days. And unfortunately, the government and the education board basically said, Roman mythology, Greek mythology is more superior. So we should study that instead. And it got relegated to go to the past. And throughout several years, the country, of course, absorbed a lot of Western culture. That's why if you talk to any Filipino, they seem to understand a lot of Western culture and everything because that's what they were fed with everything. So everything from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, they're going to get every reference you throw at because they grew up having that culture. And then so far, when we started going into the woke culture, that's when everybody realized, like, why are we studying all this? We have our own culture. And people started digging through all these old stuff. Like they resurrected an old writing language. It's like, why are we writing like the Filipino alphabet was actually based off the English alphabet. Like everything's the same. It's just that the pronunciation was different. And they realized we had our own writing. Why didn't we do this? So there's like a resurgence of that script coming back. And and what fascinated me when I looked at the stories was like I wanted to do something about this was that I heard about these stories when I was a kid, like don't go out, there's a monster there, there's this and that. And I discovered that these mythological stories were sort of prevalent on every island, that even though you were from the south and you were not completely influenced by Spanish colonial things, but instead had all those Japanese influences because during World War II the Japanese actually occupied the bottom half of the country. There, the stories, the monsters, everybody knows that, and this is before the age of the internet. Like everybody knew what a kapre was, everybody knew what an aswang was, everybody knew what a manananggal. And I thought that was pretty fascinating. It's like, how do these stories traverse from miles away, and how does everybody know about them and what they do? And when there's like an old building, like don't go there, there's a manananggal there, I go some baby everything, and I'm like, "Wow, that's pretty scary." So from that I sort of like dove deep into the reason, like why do these exist. I talked to a lot of anthropologists, writers, uh just locals, indigenous group who've told some of these tales and tried to see like what was sort of the thread that was there. And then I started building an experience that sort of had that story and also something that was based from my own personal experience. So yeah, that's a little bit of that story. Sorry, it was a bit long, but yeah.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, it's always fun to see, because I mean, especially when we talk to people from Central Europe, or even talk to a couple from Japan, where like the games they're making, they're clearly, even if they have some local flavor to them, they're clearly aimed at a Western, an American, English audience. And so
Mhm.
they sometimes lose the thing that makes them different. Whereas you're going like, nah, like we're going, this is all it is. This is what makes the Philippines special. It's not, oh, telling these stories in a way that the
That's
average the
very
average middle American would. Oh, well, it's the story of da 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 from whatever. You're saying that no, this is the story.
yeah, because when I was building this when I was building this whole game, there was a lot of conversation that I was having with a lot of folks. They were mostly like, what are you gonna do in the game? It's like, are you gonna shoot them down? And I was like, why do you all say you want to shoot them down? And I started doing some research that yes, there are VR games that involve a lot of the Filipino monsters, but for some reason they involve the same Resident Evil concept. You're in a house, there's a monster, you got to find a way to destroy it. I was like, that's interesting. Okay, that's great. There's a lot of that colonial response that I noticed, that in order to have something of the unknown, you tend to destroy the unknown, something that's foreign to you. And that's why, in most games you have a gun and you have shooters because the unknown is to be reckoned with, to be destroyed. Whereas in other types of games, the unknown is something to be discovered, to be reflected upon, and to have realizations. I mean, I can give an example such as the early days of Silent Hill 1, 2, and 3. If you've played those, a lot of the experience was on about the space, the sound, the ambience, the the monsters, the design, what they represented. Sure, there was shooting, but it was very focused around the world, the space, the environment, the puzzles. And then as Silent Hill progressed, they gave of course, the rights to develop that to a Western I believe it was a Western game company, and they ended up turning Silent Hill into a shooter, and that ended up, straining the franchise. Like, this isn't the horror that we love. So when I was making this game, it was sort of difficult to try and talk to Filipinos because they also play games. Like, they've had the history of Famicom, PlayStation, and everything now. It's very hard to talk to them about building a game about Filipino monsters where it doesn't involve you shooting them down. So that was pretty difficult for me to like try to think of a design system that had it. Like, so they were like, so do you talk to them? What do you do? Do you do tasks with them? And and that was a sort of hard exploration for me. It's like, how do you get the VR users afraid and, feel the same level of powerlessness, but, not have like that power that they can shoot? Because, if you give the
Right.
player like a gun in the space, it's like, yes, I feel powerful. I'm okay now. I can shoot them down.
Yeah,
So that
when you
was
when
something.
you give player an option, like give them any sort of crutch to lean on, whether it be a
Mhm.
gun, whether it be a crowbar, anything that could resemble a weapon, people are way less scared. Like, all right, I
Mhm.
got something. But if you take that away, like I've played a fair share of VR games, anything where you're experiencing a story and you don't have something, like I said,
Mhm.
something that could be conceived as a weapon, like you're way more interested, way more like you're going to focus on it more because the goal is no longer okay, eliminate the threat, keep moving. It's figure it out, figure out what's going on, deal with it, on. And if that deal with it is just look at it and watch it go away, then well, that's a valid response.
Mhm. That's
I,
very
I,
true.
I do like how you seem to be taking a Lovecraftian approach
Oh
in
yeah, I love
in the sense that you want like these creatures are a thing in the world. It's not like it's not a Resident Evil or I can't even think of an example right now where the threat has come in to
Mhm.
a preset world. Like the creatures are a part of the world. You're not dealing with them because they're I hate the term alien, but an alien threat.
Mhm.
They're just there. That's a part of life. You just don't go to that part of the world on a dark night because something's there.
That's true. I was thinking of Forbidden Siren actually. When you mentioned like the threats there, you don't see it. It's fear. It's the unknown. Do you ever play Siren or the Fatal Frame? I'm just remembering all these old horror games
Uh,
that I played.
no. So, Mike always likes to say that I was an uncultured kid because I didn't watch cartoons as a kid. I didn't get into games until I had a slim PS2 in probably well, it was at least oh 03,
Okay.
oh 04 maybe. So that was my first foray into games. So I have started to go back as I have time, but I'm also
Mhm.
realizing that you no longer have time. Like
That's true.
it's that chart that I always love. It's the three things. It's the kid, they have a lot of time, a lot of energy, no money.
Hmm.
I'm in the middle where I have no time, money, and like half energy, and then there's the old where you have time, money, but no energy. And I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling that right now. I just have no time to experience older stuff.
I totally agree with you. That's where I am right now. It's like, you have to play games because, it's part of your career, and I'm at the point the same with you, like, time working for money, and my energy is like getting really low. And I got to make sure that when I play a game, like, I can't be putting on my game designer lens when I'm playing this game because this is going to be bad. I need to experience this as much as I can because when I play it, it's like, okay, I understand the mechanics. I understand what you're doing here. I know what you're doing. It's pretty obvious. It's like it's and I try to get away from that. So I try to like relax before I play it, but sometimes I can't force it, but just play it. So and I feel like I'm gonna go through that when I'm gonna play the new Resident Evil 3 when it comes out because I need to like see how that horror goes. But
for sure.
yeah, Siren was a PlayStation 2 game. It was one of the scariest games for me because you had no idea what was going on, and it was a Japanese game that was dubbed by Europeans, which made it really weird to experience because it was really weird. But basically the premise was somebody stumbled on a ritual and the ritual went wrong and now everything's covered in fog and all these zombies came in. However, you as the player have the ability to slight jack, meaning like you can see what the enemies are seeing and they're walking around as zombies. So you have to like find a way to escape, but you have to like see where the enemies are walking and their paths are, and you must not be spotted or to make noise. And the story is told by different people throughout the whole village when the ritual failed. So it's pretty scary because you have no guns. So you may have a gun and you only have like 3 bullets, but the enemies ideally don't die. They just wake back up. So it's pretty horrifying. It's like I need to know what's happening, but it's also terrifying to see what the monsters are seeing as they walk around because when you slight jack into them, you can see what they can do.
I will
So,
say the added horror that you get if you anybody that's making a game out there, if you have a gun in there, have limited ammo. That is the scariest thing in the world. When
or
you're
just
when you're in a
handicap the gun.
firefight, yeah, when you're in a firefight, and all of a sudden you run out of bullets and you don't realize it. That happened to me. I was playing RE2, the remake,
Yeah.
and got into a firefight. Like I had beaten, I was like 2/3 of the way through the game and had done fine. All of a sudden, I ran out of ammo just on like a normal zombie,
Hmm.
and I'm like, all right, I don't know how I'm going to take this guy down. I have nothing. I have no grenades. My knife is barely there, and I'm either going to have to dodge this guy or hopefully survive a hit and find ammo. And like RE2 really isn't that scary of a game. It
Hmm.
has its jump scares, but yeah, adding that element of okay, I am now helpless definitely ratchets up any sort of tension.
And yeah, there are actually that's true. I've had that experience while playing RE2. The fear was mostly about, your inventory management, like you resources, limited stuff, and like how do you deal with the scenario? It's more about because the game, like games, when you play them, they exist in your head. So when you're playing something like RE2 and you're walking around like, oh, I got a gun, I'm fine, and then you're like, You're like, oh, I got 3 zombies, fine, shoot, 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 great. I'm walking in the park, and you go to the next room, and you're like, there's no ammo here, and then there are like 5 zombies, and then you're like, oh, I'm freaking out. Now where am I gonna go? I need to go there. So it starts to dawn on the player that they have to decide which battles to pick and which ones to fight and which one to move forward to, move from. So, and that's where that fear came from. And I think that was the fear that was created or at least discovered when they designed Resident Evil 4. That because it was purely action based, but the fear was more about management and surviving the scenario, less more about the environment. If
Whoever
yeah, if
whoever
that
thought
was
a management game could be scary, like you don't think about farming simulator or soccer simulator or anything like that being scary because it's not in that dressing of a scary area. But it's the same thing. It's just inventory management. It just happens to be that there's somebody coming at you that's wanting to rip your face off.
That's very true. I mean, I can imagine that to a business person, a stock simulator game that's crashing would give them a heart attack. So probably the same as that. Imagine like, oh my God, it's depleting. It's like freak out. So yeah, there's a lot of fear that can happen in a system, especially it's mostly because you've invested time on it and you've made the calculated decisions because games are mostly about making decisions and choices, and if your choices seem to fail, that's what freaks you out because you realize that your choices were wrong, and you have to realize how can I sort of make newer or better choices as I progress so that this doesn't happen to me again. It's more of like it's a great simulation to experience, failure and success, like learning through failure states. And that's ideally how I perceive games and gamers. That the way I perceive I'm hardcore gamers are gamers who can tolerate frustration, and casual gamers is gamers who cannot tolerate frustration, that they need to be encouraged and supported. That's at least the way I perceive it, because casual games mostly on the phone give a lot of feedback like you did well, here's 5 stars, here's a sound, while hardcore gamers who can tolerate frustration can play games like Darksiders. Sorry, am I saying Neo? Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm like my broadcast really early in the morning. Is that right? Was that right? Darksiders? I'm sorry. I was like,
There's Darksiders. I've never played a Darksiders.
dungeon.
I know the third one's coming out, but
What was it? Dungeon game hard. Oh my god. It's like
Dungeon Game
I'm
Hard.
freaking. Oh no. Like, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm blanking out right now.
Google Foo.
Oh God, it's like game Neo. Um Similar. I'm like I don't know why it's like my brain's backing out. Like dungeon Sekiro, there you go. Sekiro
Sekiro.
games like Sekiro, Dark Souls. There you go. Darksiders, sorry, Dark Souls. There you go. It's like a Dark Soul game. Like how frustrating Dark Soul
Oh yeah.
ideally is. So gamers are there to go through that frustration. They want to be frustrated and they want to overcome it, because when they do, they feel that sense of fulfillment. And it's not about light shiny things saying congratulations, but it's about that personal self. And that's what I sort of see what hardcore gamers are, and casual gamers are ones that I would want to say they need to be handheld, because they can't tolerate that level of frustration. That's why that's why I feel like a lot of games now, when you start a game and they don't say very easy, easy, normal, it's more like I've played games before and I've not played games before.
Hmm.
So they know, okay, we know you've tolerated this much of frustration, so we know how to frustrate you enough or not enough. So anyway, I think we went on a tangent from VR, but yeah, it was good. Yeah.
I will say it's an interesting time, not only in the world because of what's going on outside, but that with that what's going on keeping people indoors. I think now, in a weird way, especially since Alex just launched, now is the perfect time for VR because there's a big title. There's a title that's getting people to play in VR for potentially the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see like the success of VR games that are coming out in the near future on the back of Alex, and also will this kind of spur on a second development craze for VR? Because I remember like when the Vive was first coming out, like there was this kind of push to get stuff on it. So it was all the shooters that you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, what's the first thing that people do in VR? They want to hold a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe says something about the American culture, but those were very big. And then kind of these experiences when they were there kind of felt half baked because people were trying to figure out how to do stuff in VR. That now that's not necessarily a knock against the game. It's a new technology. So the first iteration of a new technology is obviously always going to be rough. Look at the first iPhone. Probably wouldn't want to use it today.
Mm-hmm.
So the first iteration of things is rough. And now that we have the index that is kind of this like not necessarily perfect headset, but as close as you can get right now, it's
That's true.
it's spurning on, hopefully, people to be like, okay, VR stands a chance.
That's true. And I actually want to, when you said first iteration, first thing that came into my head was the controller. Do you remember the very first PlayStation controller that didn't have analog sticks? It was just a regular PlayStation, and when the analog sticks came out, they just used the analog sticks as up down, but they had no idea what to do with it. When they started doing shooters as early as Medal of Honor on PlayStation 1, they had no idea how to control that naturally. And throughout, several years, there were games that understood that, okay, so the lower right now controls the camera and the top is strafe, and that sort of like solidified first person on consoles. With VR now, I'm like going to VR now with Half-Life Alyx. I kind of hope that there will be a resurgence of VR development. I mean, I've been trying to wait for the tools to be available so I can take a look at that. It's it was funny because can I talk about the job industry for VR? If
Go
is that
for it.
okay? So early on in the early days when VR came out, there's a lot of hiring that goes on for VR. I remember that because I was applying to some of those jobs, and there was a lot of it that was going around. We just want to do a contractual work because they had no idea where this medium was going to go. They wanted to look for somebody that was focused as maybe a game developer, a level designer, but understood VR because they might bring their game to VR, but they're not entirely sure. So that, and a lot of the conversations sort of like revealed to me that a lot of companies were not ready to invest in this platform. They wanted to explore it, but they didn't want to do a lot of resources onto it. So a lot of the independent developers started making their games. That's why Beat Saber came out and a lot of that was coming out. I had my game demoed early on, I think to Microsoft when they were still discovering where their platform could go, when they were still having their Connect 2. Like I was not sure if they wanted to move to VR, but they ended up moving to independent stories. And there was a lot of that was going on, but I hope that there will be a resurgence because they can realize that there is this power in storytelling. When Half-Life Alyx came out, I just like got a headset and I powered through that and I finished it as fast as I can. And it was beautiful. It was so beautiful. The space was immersive. I've seen a lot of folks play around with the head crab in the weirdest way possible. I'm not sure if you've seen that. They there was somebody who'd bring a head crab all around the game. There was somebody who there's like a dead rat that you can find in a trash bin. I'm not sure if you've seen this. They would carry the rat around the whole game, and they would like say hello to my friend, how are you, and just like make really really funny videos with it. I was like, oh, hilarious. This is
No,
beautiful.
the main thing I've seen from Alex is the teachers using the markers
Oh yeah, that was really good.
to teach lessons. So there's the one of the math teacher that's kind of made it big, but I've seen others.
Yeah, I've seen that too. I was surprised about the marker. Pretty pretty accurate because when I was trying markers initially on the lab, it wasn't pretty straightforward, but when I was using this in Alex, they got the haptic feedback just right so you could control the marker as you move. And I think that was very beautiful. So yeah, I do hope there will be a resurgence. And it Half-Life Alex has also made us decide to I wouldn't really say change the game, but sort of rethink and focus our attention to gameplay designs that we were sort of still figuring out and guessing that we want to do this. We're not sure if it works, but because we saw them work in Half-Life Alyx, we realized that we want to focus our attention to those mechanics more. So we went ahead and just like change some of the experiences so that we know that it's going to be better for the player. It's I guess it's that Half-Life Alyx was tried and true. Like all the mechanics there are stuff that they've tested for several years, and Valve realized that this is a good mechanic. People love it in play testing. People love it, so we'll release it to the public. And because you have those mechanics and systems that Valve has play tested, developers can latch onto that and build games out of those systems. So that's what
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to.
this is another iteration of Valve took a leap, and it seems to have paid off.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
I've never been happy. I've been waiting for this 13 years.
Well, the nice part is people won't have to wait long for Tales of the Aswang because May 28th, current planned
I'm
release date.
it's I'm not sure if I mentioned we're actually moving it because of the coronavirus. That's why unfortunately, yeah, we're moving it. And unfortunately, we're trying to move it to December because the team cannot meet and
Well, you'll have to wait a
our
little longer.
yeah, a little longer. Yeah, a lot of these games, it's pretty normal for games to get, I would say like yeah, they get delayed from time to time. We do have sort of, I would say, an old build that we used to show around in showcases. And after Half-Life Alyx came out, I wouldn't say I'm embarrassed about it, but I realized there were some mechanics in there that 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 probably were very risky. Have you ever tried Boneworks,
I have
the
not.
game? So when you do play Half-Life Alyx, try playing Boneworks in Half-Life Alyx and see what design choices Boneworks made versus Half-Life Alyx. And it's pretty interesting to discover how they use the physics and the environment. Boneworks uses physics 100%. Half-Life Alyx just uses just a portion of that physics to give you the interaction that you just need. While Boneworks is like you can do everything. And sometimes for players, I've noticed that they've gotten really dizzy. So that's some of the thing about when you're developing things for VR, it's making those design choices about should we incorporate this physics ability to the player or do we take it away from them? And I think that's pretty interesting because when Half-Life 2 came out, basically they gave the player everything they can do with the physics. They can throw objects with a gravity gun and do everything, even though if that broke the game. That's why there were speedrunners that used prop jumping previously in the old Source engine, but Valve was fine with that. But now in VR, it's interesting that Valve sort of like meticulously was very laser focused on what physics capability the player could versus Boneworks, where you can practically do anything. And this is not a spoiler, but in Boneworks, if you had an enemy, you can actually grab them and punch them, and that, you have physicality in that space. Like you can punch and do something to your enemies. In Half-Life Alyx, punching a zombie or a head crab doesn't do anything, but you can do that to boxes and crates and objects around the world. So that tells you a lot about the design choices that Valve made. That was pretty interesting. There's a lot of that physics decisions that you can take a look at when you compare them side by side. Because I would say maybe they're almost similar because they allow full traversal of the space. They allow you to do games. They can interact. A lot of the enemies are almost similar, but the way you defeat these enemies are pretty interesting. So yeah.
Well, I'll definitely have to check Boneworks out and get around to playing Alex whenever I have a free
Yeah, sorry
weekends.
that this podcast ended up becoming a
I mean, hey, our show tends to wander, so
yeah, it's
happens.
yeah, let's try to talk about the game. Do you have any questions about um I don't know, the Aswang, the monster
I
ideally?
guess I mean, I don't want to. I want to ask questions, but I also don't want to spoil an experience, especially for anybody that's potentially looking to get into this.
Well,
So
I
we
don't
can we
really
can
think
talk off the record, and maybe I'll shoot an email and be like, hey, I want to talk about this.
oh well,
I
I'm
want to
fine.
figure this out. But for now, we'll leave that for people to explore.
Sure. I love that. I was gonna say that, sharing stuff about the monsters doesn't necessarily spoil anything about the game. I mainly because there's mostly questions about the way the game sort of, I wouldn't really say redefines the monsters, but sort of tries to put them in the roots of where they are. So,
Okay.
an example would be, let's say, like for example, the term aswang in most places in the Philippines refer to it as just one creature that attacks you in the night. They just say, "Oh, the aswang will be there; it'll get you." But because it was a term that really never defined the full-fledged creatures, other monsters like the nuno, the capre, the manananggal, Maximo Ramos ended up using the term as the collective term of all Filipino mythological creatures. And and that's what I did in the game. I used aswang as the collective term for the mythological creatures. One creature such as the capre was was basically a tree dwelling treebeard kind of character, is ideally said for most in some cultures, or sorry, in some areas in the Philippines, is a monster that tends to threaten if you destroy their forest or their world. In some stories, they are guardians of the forest and they guard basically the relationship between the environment and the place you're living in. So I wanted to draw more into that fear of it attacking you, but also but dive way deeper into understanding it that it's there to protect the environment. So that's something that, I sort of like focus on, is that those design choices may not sit well with some, but for some it'll sit, like, oh, I get it now. But it's sort of like reintroducing, I wouldn't say, yeah, reintroducing you a bit to it, but it's a very hard trying to make those choices because when you're making something like this, you're sort of transforming oral mythology into something that's written down and concrete and viable and judged. Because with oral tradition, it's something that's passed on by stories and by folklore, and if nobody talks about it, it dies. And originally, Greek mythology was oral, but they had somebody like Plato, Homer to write it down. That's why we have these books that we refer when we want to talk about Zeus, Athena, Ares, and the Odyssey. There are writers that place all these gods and goddesses down. But in other countries, such as the Philippines, there's nobody who've written them down. Maximo Ramos tried to do that with his books. He's got several books, but because it's oral, it evolves, it changes. So my game is essentially having these stories and binding them into an experience that's in VR. So I will be expecting a lot of critique and reactions to the way I will be presenting these monsters, which I feel like is ideally going to happen.
Well, you can't please everyone, and they say any news is good news. So any controversy, whether it's good controversy or bad controversy, is uh, in the end good for you because it drives attention to the title. It could potentially pick up some sales because of people wanting the being like, oh, it can't be that
Mm.
whatever this
Um,
person is saying that bad or that good, like, and then
that's
hook them in, and
Yeah,
there you
thanks for
go.
that, AJ. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true. It's very, I mean, it's normal, pretty hard to
yeah.
please gamers
I
these
mean,
days.
it's hard to please everyone. I mean, if you made a game that pleased everyone, it'd turn out to be like a pretty boring version of Call of Duty, I would assume. Like if you made a game that appealed to everyone, it would like it'd be a boring Call of Duty that had driving and soccer in it, I guess. But
Just like get all the elements that
yep.
everybody put it all together and see what happens. Yeah,
Well,
I
I'll tell
know.
you what, man. It's been really good to talk to you.
Oh yeah,
We will
same here.
definitely talk to you after it comes out. Granted, it'll be a little bit later, but I think
Yep.
in this instance, especially with the pandemic going on,
Mm-hmm.
people are being a lot more uh, accepting of delays,
Mm-hmm.
or understanding. Like, oh, like we understand, like you can't work and you
Mm-hmm.
can't do stuff. Like people aren't. You don't see the the pitchforks coming out when a delay is announced. So you should be fine, right? Like, people are accepting right now. In 6 months, hopefully it's the same way.
That's true. Well, I'm having my fingers crossed. I have a couple of games to play and see how that goes, but keep you posted. And once we have something up, I think I'm talking to the team and see if we can release like a demo level, just one space to see how that
Sure.
goes. But I'll let you know how that goes.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks so much, AJ, for this time and this opportunity to share. I wish you well in this COVID-19 situation, and I hope we can all play a lot of games and be safe. Stay indoors, everybody. Wash your hands.
Yeah.
Wash your hands.
Stay inside. Stay at home. If you're sick, don't go. Well, I hate to say don't go outside because that would ruin your life, but just don't interact with.
That's true. Well, yeah, stay 6 feet away, social distancing. But that's
Which I don't
very
have a
helpful.
problem with. Like, I don't like touching people anyway, so this is awesome.
Oh, gosh, I forgot to put this afterthought. We're basically close to Death Stranding at this point, but
Yeah.
it's another conversation. Yeah, in its own way.
We're approaching the Death Stranding. So. Yes, once that hits, then we can talk again about how we're all porters and we need to bridge the U.S. and the other heavy-handed innuendos that he makes towards the United States. So.
True. All right. Thanks so much, AJ, for this time.
Oh yeah, man.
Leave you to it. All right. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special, as I'm calling these, the Corona interviews. Because we're all independently in some form of lockdown, of social distancing, or something going on in that fun, crazy world. I'm Mike, and today I have with me 3 people, where none of them are named AJ. We are all thankful for that. So, let's see. So I have with me the crew behind Mop Boy. Do we want to just go maybe around? We'll start with Paige. Introduce yourself, what you do on the game, and we'll kind of go in a circle.
Sure. My name is Paige, and I'm a recent graduate from Georgia Tech, and I am a programmer for Mop Boy, and I also make and some sound effects too. And yeah.
Nice. Jordan, would you like to go next?
Okay. My name is Jordan Eggleston. I am the animator for the game, or like the lead animator. I do a lot of the Mop's animations when he's downstairs. And we are all graduated from Georgia Tech recently. But I'm personally just really gunning for animation and trying to make that like my permanent thing.
Nice. And Charleston, I hope I said that right.
Yeah, that's right. So I handle a lot of the background art and also some of the upstairs like character sprite stuff. And along with that, I do some of the music. And yeah, another thing is like that I want to throw in there is that we each handle the different social medias. So like it's crazy like making this how much we had to realize that like social media is a big part of having a studio and shit, but I also do Instagram, Jordan does Twitter, and then Paige does Tumblr. So that's just like some other shit, just some insider shit.
Wait, so maybe I'm going to start with that one then. Because that to me is very interesting that instead of like one of you being like, you're the social media person, each of you are like, this is my domain.
Yeah, it's fun.
Maybe one of you could talk about this who had this idea, because I'm very curious, even logistically, how that works. Because to me, like, a marketing campaign usually is from one person or like a very coordinated team, because that way it's a single message.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so originally it was like we would have, like, we all just kind of work together to kind of make all of them work. But we just felt like if we all specialized on one of them, then we could bring our own personality to each of them. And then we could have cool things like takeovers where like maybe I'll switch up and start doing the Tumblr for a day or something. And like, you know, people can really get to know, you know, each of us kind of through that. But we don't really bump heads a lot or anything. A lot of times if one of us makes a really good post, we'll just share it with everybody else and then you can have that. But it also just makes sure we're not spreading ourselves too thin or, you know, trying to make sure that we represent the best possible version of us at all times. It's like our own different ideas of what the best possible version of us is.
That's very. It's just it on paper. It's just very interesting to me, just because logistically, and maybe because you are the lucky case of all of you, just kind of have a central vision that works really well. But like, I could so see it go wrong so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Pretty good so far.
We've been very lucky.
Nice. So, how about we start with? I'm gonna say, Paige. You want to give us maybe the elevator pitch of what is Mop Boy?
So, I would describe it as, so it's a game about a family that owns a pizzeria, and there's this bitter health inspector that they have history with who's trying to get them. And, you know, the family all kind of has to work together to keep the restaurant going, but it's also being terrorized by grease monsters. And you play as Mop Boy, who's one of the kids in the family, and your job is to make sure the restaurant is kept clean. And it's a pixel art, kind of retro style action platformer, and it's got some RPG elements. There's like a hub world where you talk to your family and you get new abilities and stuff, and yeah.
So I've got to ask, is this like from one of your personal experiences? Like it's a very interesting. Obviously, it's not relatable in the truest sense of the term, but like that's totally like we've all seen those like family shops where it's like the entire family works in. You know, it's like everyone's trying to hold this together, and like it feels like you do that and just run off in fantasy real quick.
Yeah, it's actually it's kind of interesting that you say that because my family owns a pizza restaurant, and so it's kind of based off of that. But yeah,
It's very based off of that. And that's the real life name of the that Paige's family owns.
See that just works out real great. So immediately, I think what intrigued me of the game, so this is where I think we're gonna jump into one of the two who do more art stuff, because I think immediately that's a very interesting art look for the game. And I know it's pixel art, but I think with the theme of it, it's a very like unexpected look of it too. So I was curious, either Jordan or Charleston, maybe one of you, kind of like where you got inspiration for like the look of the game.
So, started this game at a game jam. Also, I did the look of the upstairs. I did a lot of that. But we started this at a game jam, and honestly, because we only had a weekend and it was like our first one, we kind of had made a few pixel art or 2D style games, and we were just familiar with that, so we kind of went with what we knew. And in terms of the looks, honestly, I just thought of like inspirations. So a lot of people say like the style is reminiscent of like Earthbound or like Pokemon. That's because I really enjoy like those styles, so I kind of took that into account for some inspiration up there.
Yeah, we definitely, because the game is split up basically into two gameplay styles. One of them is like top-down RPG, and all of that art is like done by Charleston. And then the other part is like the actor part we were talking about, and that's mostly like, or at least the character art is done by me. And I feel like, for me personally, a lot of the inspiration for why things look the way they look is because I really liked playing Momodora, which is just like a recent Metroidvania game that really blew up. And I just kind of wanted to bring kind of energy into just a more fun environment. And this is very much like it's a bright, you know, you're just running around cleaning up grease monsters and stuff. So yeah, it has been challenging though, representing a restaurant in these big levels because restaurants only so big, and but we've kind of I think we've done a pretty good job meeting the challenge there. Oops, I'm gonna let my dog in.
See, that's actually a challenge I didn't think of when we were talking about this too. Even like the idea of like it's a restaurant. So even the biggest restaurants aren't like 50 levels big and like inherently in size. So or if it's this idea of a smaller shop of like making. So I'm curious why you guys care about making it feel realistic in that capacity. Then considering already you going in like the extra step of like losing some realism because it's a game.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know our first idea of what the game would kind of look like in this grand scheme of things is we definitely wanted to introduce each level as if it were just a normal restaurant, so it's not going to look too strange or anything like that. But as you go deeper in there, it's almost like Mop's imagination kind of takes over, and so that's where you'll get stuff like an entire tower of stacked chairs, or maybe like the bathroom stall is just a lot more expansive, I guess, and things like that. So we're still definitely working on how to, without making it seem like it's just this crazy kind of fantasy. But I think a lot of that is kind of why we steered more towards like still keep it real, like use real things, but just make it big.
So the next kind of thing that always catches me when someone does a game like this is inherently these games are very like environmentally heavy, and that ties I think into the mechanics of the games really well. So I'm curious from like either like a puzzle solving or challenge point of view how you guys kind of jumped into this as the progression of going through levels, and maybe like some of your favorite like things you've come up with of like obviously in your marketing there's like these ice pillars that come down and stuff like that, just going through the kitchen and the environments.
Okay, so I'll take this one, I guess. So we've honestly been learning this stuff as we go. We're constantly watching videos like that are like, or GDC talks, for example, on like how to design levels, and just studying like things that inspired us and trying to come up with our own mechanics and things, and like just like learn it from a coding perspective and stuff. So like one thing about this game is that because it's like our first big game that we're trying to do together, it's just constant learning and just studying stuff like that. I do a lot of the design for the levels, like for the environment stuff, and planning how the mechanic is going to tie into things. So one of my favorite moments from that has been like just seeing like the difference between the experience in the first level of the game and the second one, which takes place in the kitchen, because Jordan and Paige, we all came up with this like, and seeing that come to life and like implementing it in a fun way was like really cool, because it showed that we were really like growing and learning. So we're hoping it gets better from here.
So I'm curious then, since obviously you guys are saying you're learning on the fly for a lot of this, is there anything immediately that you thought would be super simple and you're like, oh, this was a pain in the butt?
I feel like every time we put a new enemy in the game, that's a hassle. I was very surprised by how the opposite was true of the boss. That was much easier to do, like initially, than I anticipated. Now we're still, there's still bugs and we're still ironing those out. But yeah, I'd say probably like things that move and jump around a lot. You figure that they kind of follow the same model as Mop, but they kind of have a mind of their own sometimes. Like they'll do some really weird stuff, and we just have to figure out why.
Maybe let's back a second. You guys use, what tool are you guys using this? Unity, I assumed?
Yes.
Okay. So that's kind of like where a lot of my specialty lies too, and that's what I was curious, because, and that is always interesting, because like even the AI element of that, because I assume foundationally a lot of them probably use a lot of Mop systems, but like obviously you have to build something to do it for it. It's not like the player, you're like, here's the stuff, go have fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So kind of going through this then, so you guys still don't have a release date, at least as the time we're recording this for this game. So I'm curious how you guys feel so far, maybe, of the cycle as it's your first big game together, and if there's any other like fun things that like we haven't talked about that you guys are really proud of in the game.
Can you actually repeat the question? You kind of cut out for a second there.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm curious, kind of now you guys have had a bit on this development cycle, and it's your first big game, kind of as a team. What is like anything else that you guys are really proud of that we haven't got a chance to talk about so far in there that you feel like really makes the game shine?
I would say the story, because that's been something we've slowly been building since we started, since we decided to make it a full game, basically. And we don't have anything like cemented for sure this is what's going to happen in the story yet. But I've been really proud of like all of the learning we've been doing just from a story writing perspective, and the ideas that we've had so far feel really good. But we never really post about it or show it off because, you know, they're not like confirmed that they're going to be in there yet. And also we just don't want to spoil stuff.
Yeah.
That's very interesting because again, it's one of those games that like there's always like when I go back to this type of game, even over years past, there's always like a story to kind of push a player like through a thing. But I've never thought of like the story taking the front pace of this really.
Yeah, a lot of people seem surprised, like when we show it off at conventions and stuff. Whenever we like hint at there being a story, people kind of laugh it off, and they're like, "Oh yeah, the lore of Mop Boy," as if there can't be any story to it. But yeah.
I honestly feel like it's going to end up being one of the strongest suits of our game. Just because, I mean, the gameplay and stuff is really fun, but getting to know these characters, because in the game, these aren't just like, you know, you meet somebody on your adventure and then you go off and do whatever. This is like a family, and they have history, and this story kind of like builds up a lot of their relationships and stuff, and you get to interact with them regularly upstairs. So I feel like a lot of people, if we do it well, are going to end up like really liking some of these characters, and that's really exciting to kind of get ready for.
Nice. Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you guys for sitting down with me during our fun pandemic moments together to talk about Mop Boy. Since there's a lot of social media, apparently, do you guys want to just go one at a time through your respective social media of where to find the game?
So if you just search like at Mop Boy Game, it should come up on everything.
Oh yeah, it's true.
So at Mop Boy Game on respective social media, and then it's mopboygame.com.
Yes.
And then still TBD on our fun release date?
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially with this coronavirus. But
we'll try to use it to build.
Yeah, we're going pretty hard with what we've got. But yeah, that's Tumblr, Twitter, and Instagram. All of them, Mop Boy Game.
As we close this off, for the record, you guys continuing the trend of everyone just slowly dropping Facebook off their social media ideas for video games. Like everyone I talk to, it's like be like half the people on Facebook. Now we're down to like a third of the quarter. Most people just like it's not worth it.
Nice.
Maybe if we add a fourth member, we'll have them.
I was about to say.
Do that.
That'd be like the intern's job. You like go do the Facebook part.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thanks guys, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having us.
Yep. Hello, everyone, and welcome to as I'm calling these, the Corona editions of the SWW show. Because in some capacity, all of us are in some form of isolation now. I'm Mike. Today with me, two special guests. Can we start with Bobby? Probably start with you, and then we'll move over of who you are and what game you're working on.
Well, I am Bobby. I am lead programmer for BCS Games. Currently, we're working on a new project. Just one moment.
Well, as that's happening, can the other one of us who's with us introduce themselves too?
Hey, I'm Alex. I am the lead game designer, and project manager for BCS Games. And yes, Bobby, we can talk about our upcoming game as well. So yeah, but as you probably know, I mean, we thought this podcast could be about Cranky Cannon, which is one of our older games that we released on Steam. But yeah, we're happy to talk about whatever we're working on as well.
Perfect. So, yeah, we'll get to that then first.
So we're pretty flexible. So
first, yeah. So the reason I brought you guys on here was actually to Cranky Cannon, but obviously, if you have more to talk about, we could always talk about more. So I have to ask the initial question, just because you guys are like 3 people on your team. So what is to you guys the difference between a lead developer and a project manager? Because on a team that size, to me, they should be a very similar role.
Well, pretty much. Well, we all, especially for Cranky Cannon, I mean, we all put down lines of code like no other. We're all wearing different hats, but it's always important that at least one of us basically kind of keeps the ball rolling. We have timelines and deadlines and whatnot, because I think that's really important with any game. It's just sometimes when you're so into the code, you kind of forget about, okay, well, is this 100% necessary, what you're working on? You always have fears of feature creep, That's a pretty common thing in the industry. And it's very important to always keep an entire timeline nice and organized, and everybody has their, respective tasks.
To you, then, that would mean like project managers more akin to the producer, then, was what you're saying in this capacity?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. I mean, a producer is a manager.
That is true. It's just more, I was curious, because it's obviously a team of this size. It's like, obviously you guys, each of you are wearing 20 hats on any given day, so I was very curious of like, how do you really separate? Because I always had problems on these small teams. It's like, when there's 2 or 3 of you, you're like, he does a lot of things, I do a lot of things, just some stuff he does better than me. You know how that works out?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, we also work with some independent contractors as well, so they have to be managed as well, so.
Okay, fair enough. How about, a good way to start is, Bobby, do you want to give us the elevator pitch of Cranky Cannon?
Bobby?
Elevator pitch is... okay, never mind. Sorry, I had to look it up real quick. Well, let's say definitely a puzzle game to challenge you quite a bit. It uses some semi-realistic physics as well as some wonky physics, and kind of challenges you to look at puzzles in a little bit of a different way, because it kind of blends in some platformer aspects to it, but you have to figure everything out through physics.
Yeah, so I was playing some of it. So one of the things that intrigued me, I'm going to obviously assume you guys in some capacity were influenced by Angry Birds, I would say, is one of the notorious things to me, just because the way you guys use physics and the initial launching of the characters. Is that correct?
A little bit. Actually, surprisingly, what was the kind of, the inspiration for this game was this old game called Cranky Cannon. I don't know if you remember that old web game. And the game basically, you fired a cannon, right? And along the trajectory, when it hit the ground, there were little items like explosives and trampolines that, it was totally random. You were just hoping to see how far you can get the kitten, in terms of distance. So a very, very simple concept. And we wanted to expand on that. It was just like, what happens if you could actually then directly place objects in the scene to redirect the cannonball to actually eventually get to an actual target? So that's where the redirection comes from with the arrow bumpers that you see in the game.
The arrow bumpers are a very interesting way I think you guys did it. The other one that intrigues me a lot is the way, like, it very quickly, because in its basic form, it's a very simple idea of a game. It's get the cannon into the thing of hay, you're good. But the way you guys do it, obviously, between blocking some of the stuff, or you have the bumpers, or just bounce pads, stuff like that, inherently gets it very, very, I don't want to say convoluted, but very intense very quickly. And then...
Yes.
So one of the things that instantly hit me, which I was curious, and either of you probably talk about this, is why in a game like this did you still put like a life counter of sort for the level?
Are you talking about like the number of shots, the ammo?
Yes, perhaps? You have the number of shots on a per level basis.
So the whole idea is basically each level can be beaten in multiple ways. However, each level can only be mastered. So we actually have a separation between, completing a level and then mastering a level. We wanted to have multiple shots just to allow people to keep trying to, at least complete the level. But that extra challenge, and we actually get awarded currency to actually unlock hints later down the line, which I'm sure is very useful down the line, is by mastering the level, which means you actually have to, on the first shot when you enter a level, you actually have to get to the target and use all of your bumpers. So the way it is, you have multiple ways to solve a level, at least, so you can actually, get to other levels, right? But there's only one way to actually truly completely master the level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. It was just a very, I think, immediately stuck to me as a very interesting just design choice, just because of, obviously, the way this game is played. It's just the way you guys set up is, in theory, you could just be like, well, we're just going once, and then until when you beat it, you beat it. I just found it very interesting that you guys kind of force the player to stop at a certain point and kind of like, almost like and mentally makes them think before they hit that continue button. Kind of like, okay, what'd I do wrong?
Yeah, exactly. So there is some psychology behind it as well. I mean, the original concept for Cranky Cannon, about halfway through, I mean, we were actually intending it to be a mobile game, right? A free-to-play mobile game. And then as we got through, most of the level designs, we're just like, we don't know if this is going to be, at least most free-to-play mobile games will be too privy to this type of game. Because, I mean, it is a very challenging puzzle game that is non-procedural in terms of level design.
Yeah, which is funny because when you said mobile game, I think minus the proceduralness, I think it would fit the idea of a mobile game very well. Because obviously you could see it very easily. You're like, okay, you do the Candy Crush model. If you have 3 lives, if you get a life back, it'd so easily fit that model, relatively speaking. But you'd have then handcraft a couple 1,000 levels to keep people playing.
Correct. Yes. But yeah, the reason why we also wanted to handcraft this, all the levels, is more. It was also a very educational experience making this game because this was literally our first game. None of us actually come from any type of game development specific backgrounds, especially general dev, web dev, and whatnot. And so this was very experimental. We wanted to see if the 3 of us could actually take a concept and literally roll with it and actually ship. And that's exactly what we did.
So I'm curious then, this way, and both of you obviously could hop in, probably start with Alex and then go to Bobby, is what were you guys before making this game, that you had skill sets obviously that transferred in some capacity?
So actually I come from a music and animation background. I was actually working with, before Bobby actually joined us, I was working with the third partner, Anthony, first on some music production stuff. And we were actually working on creating some, using game engines to actually create audio reactive animation and effects materials actually for live musical performances. And so slowly that actually just generally transitioned. I mean, we were already using game engines. It was a logical step. Dude, let's make a game. This could be fun.
Nice. And what about you, Bobby? Were you doing something similar, or?
Well, before all of this, I'd gone to college and gotten a degree, bachelor's computer science. But my focus was on security, data management, database work, and data structures and whatnot. And a lot of that doesn't quite transfer over to game design. When you're working with things like a database versus live engine and everything, there's quite a few differences. And then worked as a mechanic for a while, which surprisingly brought in a lot of useful things and knowledge into game design.
So I've got to ask the obvious question: how does a mechanic transfer into game design in that way really well?
Well, when you take something, when you're looking at games and everything, and you're looking for inspiration in a game, if you just try to start to create a game from nothing, you're not going to really get anywhere without first trying to dissect a system and understanding how everything interacts, whether it's being, a character inventory system and how that inventory system carries over to the weapon, and then how that weapon carries over to actually being used by the player. And with cars and everything, when you take them apart and put them back together, it really helps kind of figure out what that type of thinking is, but of being able to take something apart and put it back together from the ground up.
Interesting. Okay. So it makes sense when you say it out loud. Just in the immediacy, I'm like, that's a very interesting thing. One A to B right there. So okay. So then obviously, so you guys worked on this then, and you guys. So what is probably? We'll start with you, Bobby, and then we'll jump to Alex. What is like the first thing kind of going through making this first game that you guys completely like thought would be easy and it was a pain in the butt?
Honestly, everything.
Well,
What would you say, Bobby?
I gotta think. I'm trying to think if I can think of something that was honestly the hardest with this game.
I was gonna say the engineer over here probably like I could see you have the part of like a lot of the technical feats too. Because a lot of my background is design and programming stuff, so I could be like I could understand you like everything should be easy and then it just stops working one day.
I think basically I would say, going along with the whole, what Bobby was talking about, how being a mechanic actually does transfer over very well to, be able to break things down and then rebuild them. Literally just how specific and how well thought out every single mechanic has to be implemented. I think initially when you get into game development, you don't really think about just how much thought has to go into something as as something as minute as perhaps, okay, what is the initial velocity of a projectile, right? But that's an incredibly important factor and variable in the game. There's just a whole lot of other things that literally was very shocking. Like, just basically, Cranky Cannon was a game that was basically we conceived the entire concept. Right, we had an idea of what we wanted it to look like, and actually, surprisingly, by the end of it, it actually did come out very similar to what we had imagined. But that was almost actually a pretty magical moment because literally we were just constantly just trying to move forward and approach problems as they arose, and then tackled those problems head on. And I can remember one of them was trying to create that hint system, right? Dealing with post-processing effects and writing custom shaders for that. That was, that took us probably a good couple of weeks to do. To try to figure that out. Writing in,
Yeah,
what is
I
it?
think that was sorry about that. That was probably the most difficult piece was the whole post-processing system that had to be integrated with the hint system to get it to look and feel the way that it does was very challenging.
Yeah, I've always said with post-processing, I feel like there's always the argument of it's one of those things, when you have no job before, you're like, this is black magic, and then the first two times you do it, you're still convinced it's black magic, and then eventually you're like, this is controllable magic. That's kind of how I look at it.
It becomes practical voodoo.
I think the most challenging aspect with the post-processing in Cranky Cannon had to do with the fact that it didn't actually use Unity's post-processing stack whatsoever. It was a manually scripted post-processing system that would basically blit an LUT over the screen texture and then through Unity's low-level graphics library manually render all the objects that had to be then rendered over something that was already transparent but had to be rendered as not so much, and still getting everything else that was behind all of that to then not render, even if the shader and the GPU and everything was saying, oh, hey, this object in the background, it's transparent. It's supposed to be, it's over the post-processing. It's the same render layer and everything. And so getting everything to be cohesive and look clean was very difficult.
So I've got to ask immediately, why do you do that to yourself and not just use Unity out of the box?
Because it wasn't able to do it. There wasn't a way to get an LUT shader with Unity's post-processing to work that way at the time.
And to also make it performant on a mobile platform. At least that was the initial concept. Obviously, totally fine for desktop. But like I said, we initially conceived this idea as being a mobile game. So obviously, optimization was a very important factor.
It's kind of like a weird opposite negative you guys had of you really cared about processing, and then at the end of the day, you're like, oh, we didn't have to care to that extent, at least.
Yeah. Well, we certainly learned a lot.
Okay, nice. So now, obviously, you guys teased us in the beginning. You're working on a new project, you said?
Yeah. Actually, Bobby, you want to handle this?
Yeah, I can talk about it a little bit, let you talk about it. But the current game we're working on is going to be called Feudal Doodle, most likely. the idea behind it is it's going to be kind of like a horde wave defense kind of game. But
And this is a mobile game, by the way. So just to add, this mobile game.
But the way you're going to be able to use your weapons and everything like that you're going to be given is by drawing the path that you want to be able to basically fire like a ballista or something around. And your shot that you fire is going to follow the path that you draw with your finger. And over time, all of these paths that you draw are going to still continue to kind of stay on the screen really faded. And you'll be able to kind of see everything that you've drawn over time as each wave or each day or whatever, or round progresses, or each level progresses, kind of a thing.
Interesting. So what was the inspiration for doing a game like that?
I think I can handle that one. So pretty much we were kind of in the middle. Our game that we did after Cranky Cannon was a game we called Hyperdive that we kind of didn't work with a publisher. They wanted to change the game a whole bunch, and let's just say lots of disagreements, and we decided to scrap the project. And so we were looking for a new project and trying to come up with a new idea. And it was taking a little longer just to come up with some imaginative new concepts. And basically, I'm sitting there at the whiteboard and I'm thinking, trying to take notes. I'm just like, we're doing all these random sketches of, what we're thinking about. I'm just like, wait, what if we actually use this as basically as an aesthetic? So it's interesting. So basically, Feudal Doodle actually came out of out of more of a aesthetic or art style idea. And then from the art style, we're like, oh, this is how we can gamify it. It was totally backwards.
That is, you say it's backwards, but there's a shocking amount of games where it's like, here's this one thing, we have to build a game around this. And it could be as simple as here's the art style. Yeah.
I mean, that literally was the launching platform, the springboard that said, oh man, this is, after that one moment, it took us literally one day to literally just fill out this, we have this big whiteboard in the office, 7-foot whiteboard, and that thing was just densely packed with the entire concept for the entire game. But it just takes, just that one little, that seed of an idea.
Nice. Is there a timeline on this game then, or anything along those lines?
Well, obviously, there's a very, very different, very, very big difference in the way you approach, games to be supported on platforms like Steam versus, entering the highly volatile mobile market. So for the mobile market, it's very important that you're constantly market testing mechanics of the game and whatnot to just make sure you're on the right path, because, UA is insanely expensive on mobile compared to even Steam. I mean, it's literally all about user numbers, especially free to play. I mean, it comes down to the advertising budget, and obviously as a small indie studio, we have to be very, very careful as to how we apply our UA budget. So we're hoping to actually launch a quick little, hopefully by this Friday, a quick little mobile market test, just running some ads and whatnot, trying to just see what our CPI and our retention rates, just day 1, day 3, what for now.
Interesting. Okay, so it's one of those games that like you're gonna do the very mobile thing of like, here's our continual soft launches until you feel it's in the state you want it to be. Then
correct. Before then, you actually just start pumping money into advertising.
No. The correct answer is you just pump all of your budget immediately in the mobile market and just scream what happened.
Yeah, right.
I always find it interesting because I think it was Bethesda talked about it with Fallout Shelter. Is they tried to do originally the console approach, and then they learned, they go no, and then like because they worked with the mobile team, they're like, no, this is how you do it. And I've always found it fascinating, the differences in the way that like just pure mobile games have to be marketed, or have to be because we think of games, even with early access, you think of it as, okay, here is our launch date for early access, and here's our launch date, and the in between matter, but like we really focus on those dates. Where mobile's like, I don't care what day of the week it is.
Yeah, it doesn't matter actually. Although, I mean, most of the time when you're doing market testing, you generally want to launch them on Friday for the weekends, because you always get an uptick of mobile players on the weekend. That's how it works. So you have a much more accurate depiction of, getting those retention rates and the CPI. Because honestly, advertising on the weekend actually can actually end up being actually most expensive, and there's a reason for that.
See, that's why now is the best time, because everyone's stuck being really bored to launch something.
I know, right?
Perfect. Okay. Well, thanks, guys, for sitting down with me. So, if one of you want to walk through all of the fun stuff of where do we find Cranky Cannon, where do we find your new game coming up, and all that fun stuff.
Oh, so Cranky Cannon is currently available on Steam. Just search Cranky Cannon and it should pop up, or the first result. And then Feudal Doodle, we're hoping to actually have our full release probably in about 2.5 months or so down the line, with small little market tests. So if you're constantly searching Feudal Doodle in the App Store, we're just gonna be testing just on iOS right now. You might see it pop up, when we do those small little market tests just for no more than 200 to 300 users, But yeah, 2 months out. So expect it probably around May. Be the most accurate launch timeline.
Then all of this, I assume, would be on the bcsgames.com website eventually?
Yes, it will be there. So it'll be a nice convenient link for you to find directly on its dedicated webpage.
Perfect. Well, thanks, guys, for joining me for this discussion about Cranky Cannon and the soon-to-be... Let's make it right. Is that Feudal Doodle?
Feudal Doodle, yeah.
I'm going to botch that the entire time. But again,
well, thanks, Mike, for having us on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And again, thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And everyone out there, stay safe.
All right. You too. Thanks, Mike.